Welcome back for another version of, what is this? Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Old John Prine, still making me quite sad. Such a poet. Alright, where did we leave off? Part 6, Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The Ancient Mariner has come home. He has supernaturally flown in his boat with the help of some nature spirits, and a crew of zombie ghosts. And we'll pick up on line 464. Oh, dream of joy, is this indeed the lighthouse top I see? Is this the hill? Is this the kirk? Is this my own country? The kirk here, I'll do my impression voice. The kirk here is interesting because this is the second time it's been talked about. When they left the old town the first time on the boat before everybody died and the zombie crew had taken over, he describes it in the opposite order. So we set out, I believe he says, beneath the kirk, right to the right page. The ship was cheered, the harbor cleared, merrily we did drop. Below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. And the kirk, again, is a church, most likely a church steeple. So, as you're sailing, because the earth is round, smaller things begin to disappear. So, the first thing that disappears as they sail away is the church, and then the hill, which I assume is behind the church, much higher, and then lighthouse finally is the last thing. Or maybe the lighthouse is on a hill. But anyway, as they leave, the last part of the town that he mentions is the kirk, and then when they come back, the mariner says, oh, dream of joy, is this indeed the lighthouse top I see? Which would be the first thing, and then the hill, and then as they get to the town, he sees the kirk. So, you have an association with the kirk, or the church, with the town. It's really the only building inside the town, if we assume the lighthouse is outside, that's mentioned in the town at all. So you have a church being associated with civilization. The whole Mariner's Tale, he left civilization and he found out that spiritual forces exist all around us. And now he takes this, and it does seem like he is a member of the Christian church, as he calls out to saints and Mary, and he uses the singular God with a capital letter. But there's something about this religion that didn't teach him that all life is holy, or that there is a spiritual force that's all around us. So when he sets sail and kills the albatross, he comes in contact with these spiritual forces. Now he's come back to the organized religion with this added insight into the spiritual nature of reality. So, the Romantics really like this idea that there is some sort of external spiritual force that exists behind, or that controls the physical world. So physical things happen because of spiritual forces. Whether or not they really believe this, or this is a metaphor for our physical actions and our words are the result of some, we'll use the word spiritual or more difficult to quantify area, such as thought and inspiration. It could be a metaphor for that, but the Romantics do all seem to say there is something to that spiritual or that hard to quantify world that exists inside our brains, or that excites us when we have inspiration, that there's something to that comes from some external force. So, the mariner has returned from his journey where he's learned about these spiritual forces that exist all around us, and now he's coming back to civilization with some insight that this Christianity that he had practiced before didn't have. That the spiritual world is tangible and it's all around us. It's not just something that you do inside a church. So, he's coming back to civilization, and it seems like this church, or this kirk, is civilization's way of dealing with this spiritual world. So, the poem seems to imply here that the way that we as an organized society deal with religion doesn't quite capture the whole story, and that it's actually really complicated, which the religion or the spiritual aspect in the story is very complicated, but it's the best way that we have. Okay, so he comes back, and he continues his story talking about how, or drifting into the harbor that his town is situated on. We drifted over the harbor bar, and I with sobs did pray, "Oh, let me be awake, my God, or let me sleep away." Or, if this is a dream, please let me keep on dreaming, because it's been one heck of a journey. The harbor bay was clear as glass, so smoothly it was strewn, and on the bay the moonlight lay, and the shadow of the moon. The rock shone bright, the kirk no less, that stands above the rock. The moonlight steeped in silentness, the steady weathercock. So you have, two more lines here. And the bay was white with silent light, till rising from the same, full many shapes the shadows were, in crimson colors came. So in these three stanzas, a description of moonlight plays a part through most of those lines. And if you think back, the moon is always present in the story. You have the moon when the albatross is killed, and then the supernatural night. The supernatural night comes up. You have these, like, the moon is talked about. Then you have the moon controlling the ocean. When the mariner finally breaks this spell, it's by the light of the moon, and everything's cast in this moonlight. Again, you have an emphasis on the way the world's lit up with moonlight. The moon almost becomes a character in the story here, and I'm not sure why, but my theory is that as the ancient mariners learning that our physical world is controlled by some larger spiritual force, perhaps the moon is a symbol for this, or a metaphor for this, that this celestial body controls the ocean, or controls physical things here on Earth. Additionally, moonlight is different than sunlight. When you see things at night, you get just enough of a glimpse of it to know it's there, but you have to see it, or you see it in a different way, since you can't see it with, like, your five senses. Well, you can't see it with your sense of sight. You have to understand it in a different way. Perhaps the way that we see things at night, or we intuit things at night, has to do more with this other type of knowing that the mariner has, this way of knowing the spiritual world, so perhaps the moonlight's working in that way also. But he sailed in, and everything's lit, the town's lit up with moonlight, the bay's lit up with moonlight, the shadow of the moon, or I'm guessing that's the reflection of the moon, is on the bay. And then he says, till rising from the same, full many shapes the shadows were in crimson colors came, which I've read this line many, many times. Thank God that he put a gloss here, which says, "The angelic spirits leave the dead bodies." So in the story you have the ship's crew who are all giving him stank eyes. They've all dropped dead, and now you have the angels that were inhabiting their bodies rising up from the bodies in a crimson or a red light. And the ancient mariner continues his tale. "A little distance from the prow those crimson shadows were. I turned my eyes upon the deck. Oh Christ, what I saw there." So they appear in their own forms of their angel bodies over and this according to the gloss, over the dead bodies of the people they were inhabiting. And that's, oh Christ, what I saw there. "Each corpse lay flat, lifeless and flat, and by the holy rood," which is the cross, "a man all light, a seraph man," which is an angel, "on every corpse there stood." Okay, so the angels are floating above all these dead bodies. "The seraph band each waved his hand. It was a heavenly sight. They stood as signals to the land, each one a heavenly light." So he's just saying they're bright enough that you can see them from the land. And it seems like they're all waving goodbye to the ancient mariner, because this is the last time you see these angels. And then it turns to something else that's going on out in the bay. So they're all saying goodbye to their, oops, a message popped up here. So they're all saying goodbye to their ancient mariner friend who they've sailed home with. So they have this mixing again of Christianity with like these nature spirits. But anyways, they say bye. And then something else happens out in the harbor. But soon I heard the dash of oars. I heard the pilot's cheer. My head was turned perforce away, and I saw a boat appear. So out on the harbor, this boat appears. A dash of oars, or he hears like this. So it's got to be a smaller boat if it's being propelled with oars. And the pilot's cheer, maybe the pilot is the captain of this boat, but it's a rowboat, so it's not a very big boat. But he's called the pilot here, or he's the captain. And it seems like he's either singing right here, he's cheering, or he's telling the person rowing to keep rowing. So you got this captain of the boat who's called pilot, and then in the next stanza, line 504, the pilot and the pilot's boy, I heard them coming fast. Dear Lord in heaven, it was a joy. The dead men could not last. Okay, so he's surrounded by all these dead bodies, but he sees this rowboat captain and the captain's boy, which I'm guessing is his son, or maybe it's just like his rowboat captain in training. But they're both in the boat, and they're coming out to this ship that's all of a sudden appeared at night. And he's so happy that he sees them, even being surrounded by all these dead bodies, doesn't take away his joy. Then he says he sees a third person here. I saw a third, I heard his voice. It is the hermit good. He singeth loud his godly hymns that he makes in the wood. He'll shrieve my soul, he'll wash away the albatross's blood. So, third person in this boat is a hermit, is what he's called. You'll get a description in part 7 or a better description of the hermit. But I'll tell you now that a hermit is somebody who lives away from other people. This guy is a hermit who lives out in the woods. He sings his godly hymns. It doesn't say that he's exactly a priest, but he seems like he's really in touch with nature, or he has this like spiritual connection with nature. And so this is why the mariner ends by saying, he'll shrieve my soul, or he'll forgive my sins. He'll wash away the albatross's blood. So it's not in the Kirk or the religion of society that is going to forgive him. It's this hermit who lives out in the woods. And that brings to a close part 6 of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Sing us out there, Johnny Prime. But empty pop bottles is all we would kill.